All right, it is the best time of year, and let's get to our guest because you got to know that he's probably loving this. He's a two-time Grey Cup champion, 2007 and 2019 for some team in the province east of us. He was part of Rider Nation. He was the coaching staff from 2007 to 2009. You can catch him as part of the CFL on TSM panel. And he's the host of a brand new Coaches podcast. Episode 1 just dropped with Rider legend and CFL Hall of Famer Weston Dressler. Welcome to the all-new SportsCage, Paul LaPolice. Coach Lapo, thanks for taking the time. How are you as excited as we are that the playoffs are finally here?
Yeah, it's great to do. Like, I spent 4 hours doing prep today, Chris and Dave, trying to just get sorted out for the stats for both games. And yeah, really looking forward to it.
Now, if you haven't had an opportunity to explore Coach LaPolice's YouTube channel, the playbook is my favorite thing each and every week. So do you do more prep now as a broadcaster than you did as a coach? Because there's an awful lot that goes into those pieces that you put into terms that I can understand.
No, not even close. The coaching is a lot more time, but I got to learn different things like Canva, a thumbnail, and I don't know how to edit with Premiere. So I'm doing all that stuff myself. So the watching the film is part of my TSN process. So I can just save a couple clips and then talk about it. And I look at it as it's no different than teaching players. It's just you're just going to a different medium. So I enjoy it. And yeah, tomorrow I'm going to interview. Matt Nichols will be podcast number 2, so we're going to tape that tomorrow and hopefully release that next week. And I'll make an announcement here tomorrow. I'm going to try this out. I've never done it, but I want to do I'm going to try a live stream tomorrow night, 7 p.m. And we're going to try to go like a pregame show. So for Rider fans, we'll start with the West. Talk about the Riders games, all the kind of stuff I've talked about. So 7 p.m. local time, tune into like YouTube, Coach Lapo. I will have a live stream going tomorrow, and you can ask questions. I'll have a Q&A up, so you can ask questions as we go. I'm going to go through stats, going to go through some film, and go through and just make a couple of points about the West first, and then I'll do the East.
It's Coach Paul LaPolice on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline here on the all-new SportsCage. Coach, let's go back to your time. Rider Nation, 2007 to 2009. What do you remember most about your time here?
Just the passion people had for the game. I love the fact that, good Lord, I remember when we won the Grey Cup in 07 and we went in the back of pickup trucks through the streets and it was so cold. But there was fans everywhere. I remember in 2009 on the 13th man, we lose that game and we arrived back to the stadium and how many fans were there for us to greet us. And I can even remember, I think we upset in 07 BC. We got back to the airport. And I remember Kent saying to me, look, and all fans came to the airport. So we got off, we didn't charter it those days. So we got off the plane. And when we're in there, they had to have police escort to get us out of the place. Now, no longer fans are allowed in the airport. We actually just we get right off the tarmac onto buses. So the fan engagement was amazing. The people there were very friendly and very nice. And so I just really enjoyed my time there for 3 seasons. It was fun. And certainly with the facilities they have now, it's just a great experience to coach at.
Have you been down into the meeting rooms and the facilities that are there for the players? Like, again, we only get to get a glimpse of it as Rider Nation, but how does that stack up against other teams in the CFL or even south of the border?
I would say the top 2 in the Canadian Football League are the Riders and the Bombers. And it's going to compare to some smaller Division I colleges. It's, or 1AA scholarship schools in the U.S. But I think that, I was part of the build of the Bombers ones. I did get a tour of the Riders ones. I think what they did a very good job of, a little inside information, is they basically said, all right, we're going to leave this amount of square footage available, and we're going to go to a stadium company or a company that builds locker rooms in the U.S. And then they kind of subcontracted that out. So The Riders facility looks very much like major Division I football programs. The Bombers is beautiful, might be a little bit bigger, may have a little bit more meeting rooms and stuff, but that looks a little bit more like a traditional, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles the Riders facility does. It's you almost using recruiting players at the college level. So, but they're both spectacular places.
It's Paul LaPolice joining us on the all-new SportsCage. If you're watching at sportscage.com or you're listening on CKRM, he's got a brand new, hey, just like Joe Rogan, he's in the podcast world now. He's ready to take on all comers. Coach's Podcast, Episode 1. I love how you were chatting with Hall of Famer Weston Dressler. You went through his social media, and Weston hasn't been on Twitter since 2018. And then you started asking some rapid fire questions, and you asked him who's the best football player that he played with. And he said Durant. Now, you got a chance to coach Darian. We have him on the radio with us every Monday. It's called Double Talk with Darian Durant. 5 o'clock, he comes on. He gives his perspective on football. He went into the Plaza of Honor. What made Darian so special that obviously it all paid off in winning the Grey Cup, but he was good for a lot of years?
I think he had a good understanding, what we were trying to do schematically. But I think one of the best things he did is, like, he could create. When things broke down, he really had a really good one. He was an accurate passer. He could throw the ball downfield well, because he hit a bunch of downfield shots in my 2 years with him, and so he did that very well. But the other thing is, like, he had such a strong lower body for a quarterback, so you couldn't really take him down. He would bounce off people. We could use him in the run game. We could do multiple things with him, and he was just you just couldn't bring him down, and that created off-schedule plays. So I thought, one, he was an accurate deep ball passer, but two, he really was good because he was very hard to tackle. He broke out of a bunch of sacks and created with his legs.
Off-schedule plays. I'm glad you used that terminology, because this weekend here in Riderville, the Saskatchewan Roughriders have a quarterback in Trevor Harris who loves staying on schedule, likely up against a BC quarterback in Vernon Adams Jr. who doesn't mind going off schedule. As the offensive coach that you are, does one or the other drive you nuts?
Yeah, you don't obviously want to play guys who can use their legs and get out of stuff. You want the guys. You can blitz, and if you don't slow down, these guys go to blitz, and they blitz so fast, and they come off the edge so quick, they either don't play contain or they go for a kill shot, and you got to bring the guy down. And the thing that Vernon can have success with, Saskatchewan plays a lot of zone coverage. That's why they got so many interceptions. If they play a lot of zone coverage, can he create with his legs? And I don't mean scramble for 30. I mean maneuver in the pocket and avoid, so those zones eventually break down and receivers are open and he can throw the ball. That's going to be the challenge riders of not, it doesn't have to be that, like, he's going to run the ball for first downs. It's like he's not going to be able to you're not going to be able to contain him with 4 or 5 guys, and he's going to move around and find sooner or later zones break down. So they've got to be able to, one, get some pressure with 4 and 5 people, I think. The Riders do.
Coach, I'm not sure if you've ever been in the situation like we saw in BC. You start the season with one quarterback, and you've built your game plan. You've gone through training camp. You've built all of that chemistry, and then the business of football happens. And then all of a sudden, VA goes down, but now you have a different quarterback that you're trying to install everything with. How hard is that on the? We saw what that did to the team and on the field. How hard is that on a coaching staff?
Well, I think I've been through it a bunch of times with. You go through with injuries, and in the 19th season, went through Matt Nichols getting hurt, Chris Trevler getting hurt, Zach Collaros going in. I think what you have to do, your offense, when it goes in, even in training camp, because I do remember the years where people said, wow, Strevler went in the game, it didn't look like that different. You had a whole different offense for him. Well, I think you have to play to guys' strengths. Like, I was able to play to that guy's strengths, Chris Strevler, in training camp, and I had his package ready, and we practiced it. So everybody knew his package. It's a little bit different when BC went through, like, halfway through the season, this guy just showed up. So, I think it's a hard thing to go through, and don't forget Vernon was hurt when that happened. But watching Vernon, 2 weeks ago or last week, he just looked like he had a command of the deep ball. Justin McInnis was spectacular. That's where Vernon Adams wants to go to. I have a stat here. He's averaged 150 yards in the 2 Saskatchewan games. So the Riders better have a plan. And, Vernon just does such a good job getting the ball out of his hands. You watch him 2 weeks ago, he was spectacular. So it's going to be a big challenge. But for the BC Lions, it's a great problem to have, having 2 talented guys. But the team just really it looks like they are responding, or they're able to move the ball better with Vernon over the course of how long he played compared to Nathan.
Paul LaPolice is our guest on the all-new SportsCage, and of course streaming online through sportscage.com or our YouTube channel. Coach, I'm not going to ask you for an endorsement for Roland Milligan Jr. to be the most outstanding player, but feel free to chime in on your own if you like. Having said that, though, as an offensive coach that is game planning to play against the Rough Riders, how much do you take into account where zero is and or may be on the field?
It's obviously important, but he's not the only one who's gotten takeaways. This team leads the CFL in takeaways. And the biggest thing they do is offensively, they're number 1 in the Canadian Football League in giveaways. They don't turn it over. A giveaway is an offensive. So you had better protect the football. For BC to win, they have to win the margin or make it even. They've averaged in their 2 losses 4 turnovers each time. Now, from a game planning as a coach, your whole week is talking to your quarterback about make great decisions with the football. If you can't see the picture, don't throw it. It's okay to check it down. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. It's got to be clean for you to make that throw. So many times when you're sitting in that meeting with the quarterbacks the next day after an interception or a couple of interceptions, one thing we always watched as the coaching staff is I always took my quarterbacks and watched all the interceptions that happened the previous week, just to prove to it's not great defense sometimes. Sometimes it's just a horrible decision by the quarterback, throwing it blind, making bad decisions with the football. So, less of where Roland Milligan is every play. It's more of, hey, let's make great decisions with the football. If it's not clean, don't throw it up. Especially because Milligan's such a player that, they don't play a lot of man coverage. There's years ago that I faced a couple really good man coverage players when I had Fantus and they wanted to put Fantus on him. Well, I would put Fantus in a situation where he went to the field. And now, like, I put a running back on where the, Brandon Browner was from, if you remember that name, from Calgary. Yeah. So the boundary corner, he would still stay on him. He would lock up on the tailback. Well, we're not going to throw to the tailback. We're going to throw to Andy Fantus over the other side of the field. So it's a little bit harder with Roland Milligan, but I think it's just make good decisions with the football is what BC has to do.
Do you think that William Stanback has underperformed for the BC Lions this year and we haven't seen his best football, and that he could be a major factor come Saturday if they can get the run game going?
That's a great question. All right, I've got two cool stats for you on that. And I noticed this a couple weeks ago. The reason the BC Lions went out and got William Stanback was because talking to their coaches last year, they were like, they'd rather be in second and long and second and medium than second and 1 to 2 to 3 last year, just because they didn't have a big back. They really struggled getting conversions on the easiest down and distance get a conversion on second and 2 to 3. They didn't have that power back that they wanted. And so they go out and get William Stanback. So one area they have improved in, BC on second and 1 to 3 conversions, they're 88%. They're the best in the CFL. They're in the CFL after being 8th or 9th last year. So that has improved for them dramatically. But in 2 games against the Riders, this really good defensive line, he averages 2.5 yards. So I don't really expect that he's going to be much of a factor. They'll try to get some running game, but I think the ball's going to be in Vernon's hands, and that's how the game's got to be won.
Coach LaPolice, I'm somewhat surprised this season that Coach Mace and Coach Mueller don't have similar hairstyles to you right now, and the fact that they've both got hair being 13 offensive linemen deep. In saying that, how much do you think that Mark Mueller has had to adjust his offensive scheme this year to the players that are along that offensive line with so much turnover that they've faced all season long?
Yeah, I mean, you try to do things with this many offensive line injuries, whether it be getting the ball to your hands quicker, doing everything. I think the biggest thing that had to happen for Mark Mueller was, the two quarterbacks. That's going to be the biggest thing. How do we play Shea Patterson and then Trevor Harris? Because, to be honest, Trevor Harris now, the ball comes out of his hands so quickly. The O-line, they have to do their things correctly, but you've got a quarterback who will see pictures and throw it quickly. So I think they're in good hands in that aspect. But, yeah, certainly I thought the O-line has played well this season with all the injuries they've had.
So Coach Paul LaPolice is with us on the Western Pizza Guest Hotline here on the all-new SportsCage. You've coached a lot of good quarterbacks in the CFL. Did you see enough out of Shea Patterson in his starts when he was filling in for Trevor Harris, or whether it be in relief? Has he made the progressions in your mind that a quarterback that's 3-4 years into the league that you would need to see to be like, yeah, I can see more potential there, that there's still something left to achieve?
Sure, potential, but the problem is you never get to see these guys play. So, it's a very difficult scenario to go, where does that player go next? You're always trying, I remember talking to George Cortez years ago, a guy named Dan Lefevre who played in the league for a few years, a number of teams. Well, I remember when George Cortez had him as a rookie, I remember telling him, we loved him. I tried to get him on the neg list, and this is years ago, 2012. And he's like, oh, yeah, I love him too. He's going to be good in about 4 years, so there is a long time before. And sometimes guys play too early, and sometimes guys don't get a chance to play. And it's just hard. Who's going to all of a sudden stand up and say, all right, we're going to give this guy a lot of money to become a starter? There's not that many opportunities out there. So he just needs to stay in the system and get more opportunities and keep growing. He's got the ability to use his legs, which you like, and he seems to make decisions and throw the ball quickly.
I promise I will not put you on the spot with this question, but I remember there was the Ottawa Redblacks did a terrific job of taking us behind the scene as fans. And in 2022, I recall you signing Jeremiah Masoli and the excitement there was for bringing him into the organization. So if you are evaluating your quarterback in this offseason in the Canadian Football League, I'm not going to make you pick someone that you want to start out with, but what do you look for as being the guy that can deliver for you in the short term and perhaps long term if it works out that way?
Well, I think it always goes from this. The first thing you want out of your quarterback is he's got to be a great decision maker, because as we sit here and talk about not throwing interceptions, not turning the ball over. And two, I think one of the second biggest things that I don't know if people understand is you got to process information quickly. It happens so fast at this level. So one of Trevor's strengths is the ball comes out of his hand immediately. Why? Because he's already seen the coverage. He already knows where to go with the football. So if you've got a guy who can make good decisions, he processes information quickly, and then three is accurate, you can win with that. You don't have to have the biggest arm. You don't have to have mobility. All right. But then I'm going to put right there. I love guys who can move. Like, if guys can use their legs, I always talk to the personnel department when I was a head coach or a coordinator. Listen, this guy over 4 years in college is negative yards rushing. That means he gets sacked a lot. We don't want guys either don't process to throw it or can't use their legs to get out of stuff. As young quarterbacks, when the picture isn't clean from, they need to use their legs.